Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We are going to begin in about 1 minute. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Captain Bill Hamblett, U.S. Navy retired, Executive Vice President for Periodicals, Membership and Marketing, U.S. Naval Institute, and Editor-in-Chief of Proceedings, to the stage.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the panel session, Are Warfare Community Leaders Able to Advance the Operational Capabilities in the Current Environment? This is a very large panel, and we're looking forward to it being also the first panel of West. Before I introduce the moderator, I want to invite Marlon McFate, the Public Sector CTO and CISO from our panel sponsor today, Cohesity, to say a few words. Marlon.
I don't want to move your mic on you, so I'll come down here. So good morning, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Marlon McFate. I am the Public Sector CTO and CISO at Cohesity, and it's really a great honor. It's happy to see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd here today to introduce this critical discussion. The topic of this discussion, as previously mentioned, really couldn't be more timely as we face the evolving challenges our military leaders operate in, an environment that is defined by complexity, rapidly advancing technology, and an ever-present threat landscape. In this context, operational capabilities must not only keep pace, but also advance to meet and mitigate these challenges effectively. This will demand unprecedented levels of agility and innovation. Our military leaders stand at the forefront of these challenges, advancing operational capabilities to ensure the U.S. military readiness, superiority, and ability to win decisively in combat. This session will delve into the efforts to implement, achieve, and maintain a combat-ready force while exploring how modernization, transformation, and operational agility will drive these efforts. At Cohesity, we understand that meeting the demands of modern warfare hinges on the ability to leverage data specifically effectively. Data is no longer a resource, it's a strategic asset, and I know we've probably been saying that for years, but it's true. The ability to protect, maintain, manage, and harness data is essential for operational readiness, real-time decision-making, and long-term mission success. We, Cohesity, enable secure and scalable data management, cyber resiliency, and AI, helping organizations eliminate silos and derive actionable intelligence. And when it comes to AI into play, the potential to enhance operational decision-making becomes transformational. Empowering leaders to make more informed decisions in a world where multi-domain threats demand agility and precision, seamlessly across to reliable data is the foundation of operational success. By integrating advanced data management and AI capabilities, we can help ensure that the operational innovations discussed here today are backed by the resiliency and insights needed for success. So I'm excited to hear from today's distinguished panelists as they share their firsthand insights into transforming our forces, adopting operational agilities, and maintaining U.S. dominance in an increasingly contested world. Thank you.
All right. Well, this morning's keynote speaker, Admiral Kaler, mentioned the importance of embracing the red. And I know our moderator and our panelists this morning are all gentlemen who have, in their careers, embraced the red to a pretty extreme degree. Our moderator this morning, I'm very pleased to be able to introduce the former CEO, my former boss at the Naval Institute, retired Vice Admiral Pete Daly. Pete, in his 30-plus years on active duty as a SWO's SWO, embraced the red as commanding officer of the USS Russell, DDG 59, Destroyer Squadron, Carrier Strike Group, the Nimitz Strike Group, and he retired. His last job on active duty when he retired in 2011 was Deputy Commander and Chief of Staff of U.S. Fleet Forces Command. He then was the commanding officer of the U.S. Naval Institute for about 12 years, where I got to work with him, and he embraced the red and did some amazing things there. So it's my pleasure to turn the panel over now to my former boss, Pete Daly. Pete.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning, everybody. So we're proud to have the Navy type commanders and also CG McCiddick, General Austin, here today. I have great admiration for what they do because they have to do the all-important man, train, and equip tasks, the integration thereof, and also at the same time have to provide the leadership to develop the people and personnel within their communities. So they're doing both jobs. These are demanding leadership positions, and let's face it, these are demanding times. In the past year, we've seen the Ukraine war continue. The Houthi threat in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden has significantly impacted maritime traffic. Even though the Houthis are on a self-described pause, we still have a very big constraint in the Red Sea. And I would just like to go on record, it's not okay to spend a year shooting at our ships. We've seen Iran make unprecedented direct attacks on Israel. Israel has reduced their two major surrogates, Hezbollah and Hamas, the Iranian surrogates, but they're still there. The Assad government in Syria has collapsed. It's left a vacuum. There's a ceasefire in Gaza, but no clear way ahead on who's going to govern Gaza and the way forward there. And of course, China and the U.S. are talking, but tensions persist. So in many of these situations, there's either been a direct or an indirect Navy and Marine Corps involvement. But in each of these, there's been a requirement to meet the demands of these situations and also learn from them. It's a tall order, especially given the budget constraints of the last few cycles. We heard from one of our speakers earlier in the day that we're now down to less than 3% of GDP in terms of defense spending in the United States. So at the same time, while we're talking about others contributing, we're down to less than 3%. So they're dealing with the last few cycles due to the FRA and due to some other budgetary issues where they haven't even had enough to cover the constraints of inflation, and there's been no real growth. So we have a lot to discuss, and we're going to leave time at the end for audience questions. So we'll get that discussion going now, and be sure to leave ample time for audience participation. So I'll get right into introductions. Vice Admiral Brendan McLean on my right is a 1990 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. At sea, he served aboard cruisers, destroyers, and frigates. While in command of Kearney, DDG 64, his ship won the Battle E and the Battenberg Cup. In Major Command, he served forward as Commander Destroyer Squadron 50 in Bahrain in the Arabian Gulf. And ashore, he served at the Naval Academy, the OpNav staff, ComNav SurfPack. Overseas, and I think this is good experience, unusual experience, he served in Iraq with the Army's 354th Civil Affairs Brigade at EUCOM at the 6th Fleet and Maritime, at the EUCOM and 6th Fleet Maritime Operations Center Director. As a flag officer, he led the Navy Recruiting Command, Carrier Strike Group 10, and he served as the 60th Commander of the Naval Surface Forces Atlantic. He assumed duties as Commander, Naval Surface Forces, the SWOBOS, and Commander, Naval Surface Force Pacific Fleet on December 21, 23. We've got next up Vice Admiral Rob Goucher, 91 graduate of the United States Naval Academy. He holds a master's degree from the University of Central Florida. His tours include SSN tours in Flying Fish, Oklahoma City, SSBN, USS Maryland, commanding officer of the USS City of Corpus Christi, SSN, in Guam, forward, and Commodore of Submarine Development Group 5, Squadron 5, excuse me. His flag tours include Director of the Maritime Headquarters at U.S. Pacific Fleet, Commander of Submarine Group 9, Task Force 114.3, Director of Strategic Integration on the CNO staff, and his current assignment as Commander Submarine Forces, U.S. Atlantic Fleet, Commander Task Force 114, Task Force 46, Task Force 88, which are the strategic task forces, and Commander Allied Submarine Command. We welcome Admiral Goucher. Next up is Vice Admiral Dan Undra Cheever, a native of Downers Grove, Illinois. Go Illinois. He's a 1986 graduate of Western Illinois University in Macomb, Illinois.
Leathernecks.
After college, he worked for a Fortune 500 corporation, attended the University of Hawaii, joined the Navy in 1988, was designated a naval aviator in 1990. And Vice Admiral Cheever's command tours include command of Strike Fighter Squadron 147, VFA 147, Carrier Air Wing 8, Commander Carrier Strike Group 4, and Commander Naval Aviation Warfighting Development Center, and Director J5 Strategy and Policy Plans and Chief of Staff at the North American Aerospace Defense Command and United States Northern Command. He's a Top Gun graduate, instructor, and has accumulated more than 5,000 flight hours and over 1,100 carrier landings. And he became Naval Aviation's 10th Air Boss in February of 2024. Next up is the Lieutenant General Eric Smash Austin, who was commissioned in 1991 from the U.S. Naval Academy, earned his wings as a naval aviator in 1994. He has extensive operational experience, tactical experience in the AV-8B Harrier, to include deployment aboard amphibious warfare ships as part of Marine Expeditionary Units, combat experience from multiple deployments to Kuwait and Iraq. He commanded Marine Attack Squadron 211, Marine Aircraft Group 14, and most recently served as the commanding general of the 1st Marine Aircraft Wing in Okinawa, Japan. As a general officer, he served in the Joint Staff, J7, Joint Force Development, and previously served on the Combat Development and Integration Team as Director of the Capabilities Development Directorate. He assumed his current role as the Deputy Commandant for Combat Development and Integration and Commanding General of the Marine Corps Combat Development Command in August 2024, where he and his team lead the service in all aspects necessary for modernization of the U.S. Marine Corps. Vice Admiral Mike Vernazza is next up, 1990 Naval Academy graduate. He later earned a Master of Arts in Public Administration from Troy State University. He's a graduate of the Naval War College and the Joint Forces Staff College. Initial assignments were in surface warfare community before he left and became an intelligence officer. He served in a variety of operational and ashore billets, including Commander, Naval Information Operations Command, Georgia, Commander of the Naval Information Warfighting Development Center, and most recently he served as Director, Maritime Information Warfare, U.S. Pacific Fleet, and commanded Fleet Information Warfare Command, Pacific Information Warfare Task Force 501. Vice Admiral Vernazza assumed duties as Commander, Naval Information Forces in July of 2024. As the IBOSS, he's responsible for manning, training, and developing and certifying the more than 60,000 information warfare professionals across the globe. We welcome him. Next up is Rear Admiral Jamie Sands from Farmington, Connecticut. He's a 1992 USNA grad and later completed, now I've got to get my glasses, later completed the military strategy and planning from Joint Advanced Warfighting School and served as a federal executive fellow at Duke University. His operational tours included surface warfare tours in USS Saginaw, USS John Rogers, as well as assignments with SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1 and SEAL Team 2. He's commanded SEAL Team 8 and Naval Special Warfare Group 2 and served in several key positions within joint task forces in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. As a flag officer, he's commanded the Naval Service Training Command and Special Operations Command Africa, and as SOCOM Chief of Staff. Rear Admiral Sands assumed command of the Naval Special Warfare Command in March 2024. And last but not least, we have Rear Admiral Upper Half. Congratulations, Brad. Brad Andros, who's 1994 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. His sea tours include operational tours aboard USS Safeguard and Explosive Ordnance Disposal EOD Mobile Unit 11, EOD Mine and Countermeasures Officer for Cruiser Destroyer Group 5, which later became Carrier Strike Group 11, EOD Officer for Commander U.S. Fifth Fleet, and Executive Officer of EOD Mobile Unit 6. He commanded EOD Mobile Unit 8, homeported in Rota, Spain. His major command was as commander of the Naval Expeditionary Combat Command Task Force 56, where he's responsible for employment of Navy expeditionary forces in the Middle East. As a flag officer, he served as Director, Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction, J-10, at the U.S. Special Operations Command. He assumed duties of Commander, Naval Expeditionary Combat Command on 30 September 2022. So we have a big panel, but we have a lot of time. But the first question I'd like to put to the panel, because we're not going to do a bunch of little speeches, but we're going to do an icebreaker question here as follows. So first question, and I'd like to start this way, if I may. CNO's laid down aggressive 80% targets for combat surge ready. And can you tell us your top 3 warfighting priorities and how you're tackling those challenges to put more players on the field? And are the current force generation and depot maintenance processes up to the task? And for Lieutenant General Austin, we'll ask him to provide the same perspective versus the backdrop of the Commandant's guidance and FD 2030. So let's start with Admiral McLean.
Okay, thank you very much, Pete. What I would say is top 3, first is we have to finish our maintenance availabilities on time. Right, I know it doesn't really fit when you think war fighting and I immediately go to maintenance. If we don't finish our availabilities on time, we're not going to be able to get the training entitlement that we need before we get to the advanced phase. So it has to be with finishing avails on time, and industry is a huge partner in ensuring that we can do that. The second priority is finishing our basic phase Tier 1 training in 10 weeks. That's our goal for 2025. It's a big part of how we're going to achieve our 80% combat search ready, and it's certainly doable. It's a stretch goal for us, but the first thing you have to do is start with a plan, so every ship is going to have a plan to finish basic phase Tier 1 in 10 weeks. The third is to get to peak personnel at the beginning of basic phase. Where we're 8,000 apprentices short at sea. That number is coming down thanks to recruiting making mission last year, but we still have a large gap of sailors at sea, and the way we're going to manage that is making sure that the sailors on the ship are going to get the full benefit of the training entitlement. We, in surface warfare, learn best as teams on ships. And if we can have as many people as possible at the beginning of the basic phase, then we're going to be able to take advantage of that training that we get through basic, advanced, and integrated phases. And then the last, I know this is 4 out of 3, but that is integrating unmanned surface vessels into a hybrid fleet. That would be my 4th priority out of those 3.
Thank you. And I turn it over to Admiral Goucher.
Yes, sir. So I think the top 3 that we have in the submarine force to get to our 80% goal are, without question, getting depot maintenance on plan, and that's our in-service submarines that are going through 2 to 3 year availabilities in our public shipyards. The second thing is our new construction submarines, so building our submarines on plan and getting to our goal, which includes both Columbia-class and Virginia-class build rates, which we're largely doing in our private shipyards. And certainly we're relying on the industrial base and our recent investments to make that happen. And then really what I focus on at the TICOM is preparing the force for the challenge in 2027. So by the end of the week, we are less than 700 days from 2027. And so we've made that crystal clear to our force. We issue a plan order every 100 days to make sure that the entire force is aligned to that. And so what we're focusing on is fighting with what we've got. And so if I was to give you an example, I don't need a new system. I don't need anything better than I have today. If I just can load weapons faster, I can shoot faster. So we're focusing the force on getting ready to be more lethal with what we've got. And so we're building our tactics, techniques, and procedures. We're using the principles of get real, get better to find ways we can take the time out of our reloads, whether it's countermeasures or torpedoes, so that we can fight better. And we're practicing in our exercises and our submarine command course operations to operate in the environments that we expect to operate should deterrence fail and we have to go fight in 2027.
Just a quick follow-up to you as the Sub 4. We've made immense investments in the submarine industrial base. Are you encouraged by the results thus far?
Yeah, so am I encouraged? I'd say yes, and I'm optimistic, but we are by no means anywhere near through the knothole on that. We have a lot of work left to do. We've got to turn those investments into what we need to get on plan. And so a good example is we made investments in parts and materials so that we're not waiting on those things, because that's a big contributor to what prevents us from getting out on time. But we're not going to recognize the fruits of that till probably 2026, just because of the lead times. And so then it's on us, once we get them, to get back on plan.
Roger, thank you. Admiral Cheever, the Air Boss.
Thanks, Pete, and thanks to FCA West and everybody who's here from industry who sponsored this. Very much appreciated. 3 priorities: high-end warfighting, treatment of our sailors and civilians, and safety. I'll go in reverse order. Safety, you got to reduce the mishaps, and we're on that journey. We reduced them by 27% in the last 6 months after we set an aggressive goal in the last half of 24. That gets more ready platforms out there and saves our sailors from harm. Back to that, up to the treatment of our sailors. I aggressively and jealously guard our sailors' time so that they can do warfighting and warfighter training as the priority. I'm trying to get everything else out of their way. So if anybody's making training that's not warfighting and warfighter training, keep doing it, but make it 60 seconds or less. They need to learn fast on that other stuff, but concentrate on what they do best. I need maintainers to maintain our platforms and be great maintainers, supervisors, and leaders of the maintenance. That's what I need. I need warfighters who can go out there and do the warfighting business. So everything we concentrate on is that, and I'm getting everything else out of the way in 25, aggressively. So stand by, and it's pretty exciting. I got full support from CNO and the rest. On the high-end warfighting, that is all about our platform. So aircraft carriers out of maintenance on time, all the platforms that we need, all the weapons that we need, all the sensors and the TTPs and the rest of it that the team brings to bear. We will fly MQ-25 in 25. You can quote me on that. We will fly that platform in 25 and get that thing on a carrier in 26 and start integrating that thing. That unlocks the future of manned-unmanned teaming, which is number 2 in the NAVPLAN for Admiral Franchetti. And we're going after that thing hard so we can do manned-unmanned teaming in a big way off an aircraft carrier, and that is a different world. It opens up the future of 6th-gen collaborative combat aircraft and everything that comes after it, because as you think about the build right now for CVN 79, 80, and 81, they'll be here in the 80s. So what's on that aircraft carrier in the 80s that still wins? I can only imagine, what's all on there. Think direct energy weapons, think AI, you name it, it's going to be on there and capable. The aircraft carrier is indispensable because it can do all 7 joint warfighting functions and take over the Maritime Operations Center task force job in an AOR in a region to do that mission. A couple other things in the high-end warfighting, live virtual constructive, what we do up in Fallon, Nevada to make sure that our kill ratios are very high against any enemy. So numbers matter a little bit, kill ratios matter a lot. So we're getting after that and appreciate everybody being here.
Andre, you mentioned MQ-25. I mean, we've got the tanking mission, there's a surveillance aspect. What can we expect to get out of that platform? And is there more?
Yeah, so the big thing is the tanking mission to extend our strike fighters on long-range strikes and that kind of stuff, and air, because what we bring is air superiority to ensure sea control around the globe. But yeah, there's a lot of future potential capability there, and I won't go any further than that, but there's a lot of potential there. But the tanking mission is absolutely what we need now out of that platform.
Roger.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you. Lieutenant General Austin.
Thanks, sir, very much. Hey, first a comment was made, there's a lot of familiar faces in the audience, and I don't know what he was saying because I can't see any of you because of the lighting here, to be honest. But, I think I see V8 right there, but hey, it's an honor to be here, and I want to thank AFCEA and all our sponsors, our industry sponsors. I think that the conversations that we have in industry are tremendously important. They're not frequent enough. The more you understand what we're thinking, the more we understand where you're headed, the more we can drive this in a meaningful and a responsible direction. I also want to just say it's an honor to sit here with these amazing leaders and in many cases dear friends and warfighters on this panel. And I thought sitting in the middle as a Marine I was going to be the one off, but I think it may be you, Andra. But anyway, I'll leave that one alone. Hey, when I took the seat back in August, our commandant gave me a letter, 2 pages, told me what he expected me to do, and very soon after he launched his Commandant's planning guidance, which gave us a clear guidance. So my points will nest certainly within those, and I am unique because I kind of represent across the Marine Air Ground Task Force and what we're doing beyond just a TICOM look at how we're operating as an FMF. But I'll tell you that the 2 of the Commandant's first 2 priorities are balancing crisis response with modernization, which is a journey we've been on since we started force design in 2019. And we're getting to the point where we're getting to field capabilities that we need to necessarily, and we're very focused on velocity and accelerating those and getting those in the hands of the warfighter for obvious reasons in time to train and prepare and equip and deter ideally or defeat adversaries. And then littoral mobility or organic mobility and naval integration. Those are the 2 Commandant's priorities. So within those, I'll tell you the 3 things that came to mind based on the question. One is littoral maneuver and mobility, which comes to roost as we're working through not just the landing ship medium procurement process, but also through many of the solutions that undergird that near term. There's some bridging solutions we're looking at, and it also certainly has strong hooks to Admiral McLean and his team in the readiness conversation, which I would argue what you said was 100% warfighting, that readiness matters, and I completely concur with that statement. So there's connectors, there's amphibs, there's MSC, and there's our littoral maneuver that we're getting after. The second one, priority would be with resilience, closing joint kill webs, and that's something we're very, very focused on, and we think that's a role that the Marine Corps can certainly enhance. In some cases they're organic kill webs, in some cases they're naval, in some cases they're joint, or in some cases they're with allies and partners, but having the resilient compass, the compute power, and the appropriate database applications to have human honor in the loop is really exciting, and an area that we're headed locked arms with the United States Navy and others, but tremendously important. And then the last one is closely tied to that, which is long-range fires. And again, if you take a look at the entire MAGTF, their capabilities from our aviation combat element, and but all which are important, and we have a lot in common, obviously, with my friend to my left. But beyond that, just if you were not tracking, we just inside the last 6 months, last 3 months, fielded the first. Get ready for an acronym. Navy Marine ship Nemesis, Expeditionary Ship Interdiction System. It is a JLTV chassis with Naval Strike Missile on top of it and the C2 capabilities to actually leverage that. So we fielded that to the 3rd Marine Littoral Regiment, who is campaigning with that through this winter into the spring. And there are other capabilities that are similar to that we have to get cheap and many long-range fires to do what we need to do to deter and defeat. So I'll stop there, sir. Hopefully that...
No, thank you. Appreciate it. Admiral Vernazza, next up.
Hey, good morning, sir. Thank you.
Morning.
So my number one job, CNO assigned NAVI4 to be the mock TICOM. So we are in charge of man, train, equip, certify for all of the fleet mocks around the globe. So that is probably one for us as we move forward. So what does that mean? That means to make sure that all of the mocks have the right manning of the right designation and rates, and to ensure that the mocks are aligned not only to the 7 joint functions, but the over 150 tasks that each mock must be able to achieve to be certified. That ensures that our sailors are trained to operate the equipment in the mocks. That includes both program of record and non-program of record systems, to include specialized capabilities that come in at a classified level so that they fully understand what that kit can bring to the fight. Second one would be to operationalize information warfare broadly. And what do I mean by that? That means to build on our current information warfare commander construct that we have for our carrier strike groups and our FIBRONs, and build that structure out commensurate with the other warfare commanders. It also means building out many of our classified capabilities that we are investing in as both a service and with the Joint Force in the information warfare communities. CNO's NAVPLAN speaks to them broadly in terms of counter C5ISRT, long-range fires, terminal defense, non-traditional sea denial, and contested logistics. And then the third one would be live virtual constructive training at a TS SCI level and at a SAP level. So much of what information warfare needs to do has to be done not in an open environment where the adversary can see and collect. And so as a result, building out that LVC infrastructure is one of our main goals for 2025.
Thank you. I have a question on, when we stood up 10th Fleet, initially we did not stand up a type commander. That came a little bit later. And now, how do you feel about the establishment of the type commander function and the resourcing that's gone with it, given that came later?
Yes, sir. So thrilled that we stood up a type commander for information warfare. We definitely need it, and I'm very close partners, obviously, with 10th Fleet, Fleet Cyber, and that. And then the resource sponsor for us is Admiral Thomas up in N2 and 6, and so I'd be lying if I didn't tell you I was always beating down his door for more money and more resources.
Roger. Thank you.
Okay.
Next up is Admiral Sands, Navy Special Warfare.
Hey, thank you, Pete. Thanks, everybody, for being here. So for NSW, it really all begins with our purpose. So NSW exists, right? The reason, the why behind us is we provide maritime soft capability to enable joint force lethality and survivability in denied and contested areas. And as we think about our purpose, the challenge for NSW right now is deciding what we're not going to do. Some major changes. SOCOM and NSW combined are no longer the supported command. We did it for about 25 years. We are now supporting, and that really changes everything, is how we approach it. We're going back to really the roots of our NSW identity with the NCDU and UDT, where we were formed and existed to support naval operations, and that's what we're doing again. Our capability priorities underneath our purpose are 3. The first is to provide non-kinetic effects to enable joint force lethality and survivability. So think cyber and space capability that can be decisive inside the WES. Second is to enable long-range fires. There's a lot of talk and discussion appropriately about kill webs. NSW has the capability with our penetrating surface and subsurface craft to get in and to close kill chains in support of the Navy and the Joint Force. That's specifically to enable not only close the kill chain, but to provide BDA, battle damage assessment, to enable joint force maneuver following strikes. And then finally, kinetic effects. So some of our traditional bread and butter work, disabling or destroying surface and subsurface craft or structures. So that's where we're focused in NSW. Again, everything underneath our purpose, the capability buckets, and then finally our force presentation model is O5 Maritime Special Operations Task Forces. And this one, if I could just talk about this for a second, Pete, because this I think is confusing to people sometimes. The question is, well, where is NSW going to be in conflict? And how will we be decisive? And what I would say is we deploy these Maritime O5 Special Operations Task Forces through an SDOB, SecDef SDOB, to Global Combatant Commands. They're pushed into a Theater Special Operations Command, which is the operational commander for SOF in that GCC, and that's how we function. And that infrastructure, the connection and the connective tissue is already in place, and we really fall in on it for operations.
That's terrific. Thank you. Admiral Andros.
Hey, sir. Thanks for letting me be here, and thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak. From NECC, from the Navy Expeditionary Combat Force, a few things as we're looking at 80% of the players on the field and the CNO's goal. One, what we're doing at NECC. And when you have this Expeditionary Combat Force, our focus is shifting from the global war on terrorism, where we're supporting a very joint fight and joint-centric, into supporting the Navy and integration. So when I look at 80%, it's what am I giving to the fleet? How am I enabling the fleet to get to the spot that it needs to in DMO, and then sustaining them as far forward as possible with the different capabilities we're bringing to bear? And how do we help the Marine Corps in the same vein? How do we keep them in the WES and give them the capabilities they need? So the three priorities as I'm looking at these is first, wholeness. We operate under GWAT in a very robust and sustainable environment, and we're able to take a lot of equipment with a focused task and buy what we needed to get after that. As we're looking to get to major combat operations certifications, we're buying a lot of equipment. But we're trying to do it in a sensible way, where we look at how do we get our 80% on the field, and how do we allow the PAC fleet commander, NAVPLAN, or fleet forces to then ignore us. So I'm looking at lighter so we don't become a logistics problem, something that's simple so that our people can operate and fix them in the field, and something that's sustainable so we can get after what Admiral Kohler was talking about, being there in a prolonged manner. Second thing is fleet interoperability and talking about that. If you look at 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and you looked at what we were doing, our advanced phase training, our integration training was with the Joint Force. It's now moving into how do we integrate with the fleet and how do we support that. A lot of good things that we probably will talk about later in this panel where we're getting lessons learned on that. And the last one I'm going to wrap up under quality of service. Two things here. To get 80% on the field is a combination. We could ask for more, we could get more ready, or we could look at the OFRP. So when I look at the quality of service, it's how do we train up and get the people and hold on to them in sustainment phase for the longest period of time? How do we make the training in the basic phase as valuable as possible? And then how do we get the repeat offenders? How do I align the personnel policies that affect our force so that we can maximize the amount of sustainment phase? Align it toward lengths to OFRPs, or maybe twice the amount of an OFRP, so that fleet commanders and I can make a decision at the end of an OFRP, if crisis happens, to just hold that in sustainment phase and not break it up. Those are my three priorities, sir.
Just a quick question about, one of the themes here is, from the CNO, having more players on the field. I kind of see your job as keeping some of the players on the field. So if we operate in the WES, if we get into a combat situation and sustain hits, you can't repair forward and without getting rid of the UXO, the unexploded ordnance. Do you have a level of effort for that to keep players on the field?
Yes, sir. So, we were talking about, 5 Rs, and we're very much integrated into that, and we're with OpNav N4 and all their campaign plan about getting after and keeping and pushing all the things that we need to do to sustain the fleet forward We've got a part everywhere, whether it be CBs, whether it be expeditionary logistics, which was mentioned earlier today, and which we've been using in the past year and a half in a very good manner. If it's EOD, taking care of UXO, it's just going back to our roots. I mean, USS Stark, we were, back in the day in USS Stark, there were people that were sitting in Norfolk, and 2 days later they're out there, doing UXO in the middle of the Persian Gulf. So I think we can get to it, and that's what we're focused on, sir.
Thank you. So for the next round, I'd like to just get at this point. I'd like to ask our panel if they could share some of their key insights from what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, and the defense of Israel, and maybe a little bit about the South China Sea, but mostly those three. And for years, we heard that combat capability for all conflicts was a lesser included of the major conflict. But it strikes me that some of these lessons learned may get at niche capabilities to deal with certain specific lower end threats. And I'd like to get the insights on that and see what our panel has to say about Ukraine, Red Sea, defense of Israel, lessons learned, and do we now need something else? Over to you, Admiral McLean.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Let me tackle the Red Sea question. In my answer, in the previous speech, Admiral Kaler talked about the OODA loop. And I think that's a good framework to kind of think about what we've learned in the Red Sea about process. And if you think about it as a loop, a feedback loop, if or when one of our ships has an engagement, the Fifth Fleet watch floor calls our watch floor at the Surface Warfare and Mine Development Command. They get in touch with our WIDIs there. The WIDIs then get in touch with the ship, and we start this process where we do an over-the-air transfer of all the engagement data that we have, and that goes to our Naval Surface Warfare Center in Dahlgren. They download it, and then they work together with our folks in Corona, with NIWIDIC, and with Lockheed Martin to see, okay, what happened? And it's kind of like NFL game film. Like sometimes, in the press conference, you get the answer, like, we're not quite sure what happened in that play, we're gonna have to watch the film. And that's exactly what happens here. We break down the film, and then we get feedback to the warfighters on the ship within 48 hours. So that goes to the ship, the Desron, the fleet, and the strike group commander. And then we do just to see, was the doctrine followed? Was it successful? Anything else that we could learn from that? We do a deeper dive. That usually takes a few more days. And then we take those lessons and we share them so that if we had seen a new tactic being used against us, or if we had seen something that we can do better, that then goes to Strike Group 4 and Strike Group 15 so that we can work that into the next Comp2X. It's already inherent with our WIDIs at SMITIC, so it gets wrapped into our next SWATs. And then the third part of the loop, it goes, it's already in Dahlgren, but it also goes up to Newport, so it gets worked into the curriculum for our tactical action officers at Surface Warfare Officers School and at Surface Combat Systems Training Command, so that all of our warfighters, as they're going through their brick and mortar schoolhouses, are getting the very latest on what's happening in the Southern Red Sea. So that OODA loop process in the 15 months that we've been fighting in the Red Sea has been used 55 times. With all the engagements that we've had, and when it turns into something sometimes complex, where we need to make a change, we even, and if you can kind of think of the scenario where a strike group has already gone through a Comp2X and a lesson's been learned subsequently that needs to be shared with them, we fly WIDI teams out to the strike group to get all of our ships up to speed on the latest tactics.
I'm a little dated here, but I always thought it was kind of a weakness that we had to have the bandwidth and the speed to share massive amounts of data. So we've got just the kind of audience here that might be interested in this, but how is that going? I mean, it's terrific that you've got that exchange, which I love, but how about just specific lessons learned about, you know, are you using other means to get data exported off the ship and back? So you can do just this OODA loop you described.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, in the past, it took us like 40 days or more to complete that loop.
That's a long time.
A long time. Ship would have to pull in. We'd have to download it on tapes. The tapes would have to get, you know, hand walked all the way to Dahlgren. So the satellite connectivity that we have now enables us on every baseline to be able to do that download. And that took a lot of industry and Navy partnering to be able to figure out, because it's a different way with each baseline, to be able to get that loop completed.
Got it. But you're satisfied where we are now?
Absolutely. Very impressed.
Roger. Admiral Goucher.
Hey, so the reality is there's not a huge amount of submarine presence or threat in either the Black Sea or in the Red Sea for us. So, but I'll try to give you a little bit of what I've taken away from that. So first of all, one thing we are doing, certainly in the Red Sea, is supporting Tomahawk strikes with our guided missile submarines. Now these submarines are getting old, and so I think the big lesson learned there is the continued emphasis on understanding the material condition of the ships and the focus on our crew's ability to fight through problems by using our redundant and resilient systems to be able to meet mission tasking. And our crews have done a phenomenal job of that, and that speaks to the importance of understanding our ships and the level of knowledge, the certification that we execute through the man, train, and equip cycle. So that'd be my big lesson learned for the Red Sea. In Ukraine, I think it's, as we watch this, is just looking at the potential that unmanned systems have and the importance to get those systems in the water and try things. So you see some of the successes the Ukrainians have. There's also a lot of failures they've had, but they're failing fast, they're learning fast, and they're finding ways to take these systems, piece them together, put together whatever con-up they can, and get some amount of results. And I think that's a good model for us as we look to drive more lethality and more operations with our unmanned systems. And then finally, as I relate this to the South China Sea, you know, what we're seeing is, you know, our surface ships are certainly in harm's way, and they are, you know, in a wartime scenario. What we're seeing in the South China Sea is competition. So we are no longer in a peacetime world. We are in an era of competition, and the risk calculus has changed. So we grew up, you know, in the early 2000s with wars in the desert. There was very little threat to the submarine force. As we now have two nuclear-capable adversaries or potential adversaries in Russia and China with complete nuclear triads, the stakes are up. And so seeing what our forces, our surface forces are dealing with every day in the Red Sea and having to be on their game every day, we're translating that to our worldwide operations because we know we're in an era of competition.
Thank you. Thank you. Admiral Cheever, same
Thanks,
questions.
Pete. My number one takeaway is the demand for our forces. The demand is extraordinarily high. The other thing is simultaneously, we're doing the Red Sea piece. We're assisting in the Ukraine piece of it, and we're doing South China Sea. So we're preserving the peace, responding in crisis, and win decisively in combat, all simultaneously, all around the globe. If that's not a key takeaway, I'm not sure I'm following the music right. A couple other things here. Our weapons tactics instructors that we train up in Fallon with SMITIC, NIWITIC, UWDC, those young warfighters are the key to this thing, right? They're taking this information real time. So it's basically real-time threat analysis and the team getting after the tactical adaptation and the sensors and the systems and updating them real time that Brendan was talking about. That is a key takeaway. The speed of that is at an all-time high. We're learning fast as a team with transparent comms, telling the truth to each other, which is awesome. And then trusting each other, that we got each other's back and we war fight together as a team. I think that's a key takeaway here. The littorals are an interesting environment. It may point to the future of non-littoral combat in a blue water mindset, but currently those are all littoral, very close to threats that all the threats can come out. Ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, unmanned systems. They can all reach their intended targets, and you're in the WES across the board. Interesting from Webb's comments earlier, for 15 months, we've lived inside the weapons envelopes of those threats, ballistic missile, cruise missile, and unmanned systems. We've done it successfully with the Ike Strike Group, with the Theodore Roosevelt Strike Group, followed by the Abraham Lincoln Strike Group, followed by the Harry S. Truman Strike Group. So for 15 months, these young warfighters are executing the mission in Fifth Fleet and beyond, and that's just awesome. A couple other things. Back to the demand signal, our expeditionary forces, our P-8 forces, our MQ-4 unmanned systems around the globe are in demand beyond the norm. And you've seen some of the extensions on the SDOBs and all those kind of things for global force management. That is a reality of the world, but it also shows the flexibility, adaptability, and lethality of what we have. And then the last piece I got is the teaming with our allies and partners that integrate with us seamlessly and interoperate with us seamlessly is the key to the future success. So a lot of key takeaways from this.
Right. I've always admired the debrief process in naval aviation and what you've done for years up in Fallon. Of course, now it's got this real-time aspect, and you have the analogous challenge that the surface guys have to get stuff back and forth quickly. And I'm wondering, have you thought about or are executing at an integrated level? Like you take something like air defense, integrated air and missile defense. Are we also taking this with the WIDIs, with the exchange of data, to a point where you're doing cross-community debriefs?
A-firm. So Wilson out there with Opie up in Fallon, seamless communication with NIWIDIC and the information warfare folks, the underwater warfare folks when it makes sense, but they're all together. The other thing is industry drops everything. Our whole team, agencies, the whole team drops everything, and everybody's focused on the supported commander, George Wyckoff out there at Fifth Fleet, and the warfighters in the Carrier Strike Group and the other forces that are there like never before in order to turn things around, learn quickly, make sure those young warfighters are safe, and get what they need in a rapid fashion. So I've never seen it this good. There's still improvement to go,
of course, but
it's rapid and it's awesome. And the teamwork is as tight as I've ever seen. There's more to go, but it's awesome.
That's really good to hear. For the Marine Corps, you haven't had as much direct involvement in some of these things, but the lessons are there, and a lot of them seem to speak to some of the insights that came out of FD 2030. Your thoughts on this?
So thanks for the opportunity here, and first off, great comments by my fellow panelists, and to Andre's comment about just presence matters, and I will tell you there's an insatiable appetite for not just the carriers, but the ARGMUs. And 3 months ago, we had 3 deployed at one time, 31st, 15th, and 2-4, all doing important work, HADR, deterrence, you name it, and that's what right looks like. So that's important to us, and that's our goal, is to maintain that kind of a presence. The point of the question, I think, is about our ability to adapt, to recognize the changing character of warfare and adapt, and that, I think, is an essential skill set that has to be resident on my team. And the hardest thing we do at CD&I say this often to my folks, is collect this campaign of learning, this body of evidence, which is underpinned by evidence and data, and turn it into resource decisions or recommendations for our commandant that make us better warfighters. And it's every bit as challenging as it certainly sounds. We're working at ways to improve that technically, but that's not the question, so I won't go there. I will tell you, I won't talk much about the South China Sea, but as a recent alumni of 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force, things have changed out there. I served there 10 years ago, go back time now, and it is an entirely different context. Allies and partners are acting very differently. Xi Jinping is a good alliance builder, if I may say that, and there's just a lot of untoward activity in that theater right now. I can tell you a story about being in the C-12 and being intercepted by Chinese fighters on my way to the Philippines, but I won't tell it right now. That didn't used to happen. But to your specific questions tied to Ukraine and Red Sea is where I'll drop anchor for a second. When we're paying close attention to both, and if I were to talk Ukraine, I would say it's about adaptation and agility, recognizing that they're in an existential fight for their country, which changes their risk calculus and acquisition. We're not there, but we are maybe too risk averse in some of our acquisition processes. There's a lot of discussion about that, and there's room to have that follow-on conversation. I would say that the hider-finder fight is very, very real. The ability to use camo concealment, signature management, mobility to survive, and then the counter-UAS, which we're proud that we're fielding 4 counter-UAS capabilities, everything from dismounted to our LMATIS to MATIS, which are mobile capabilities, to some installation capabilities this year. But fielding them is not enough, ladies and gentlemen. Fielding them is a hardware solution, and we have to continually iterate and improve the software. And back to Andre's point, then it's going to be the Marines and sailors that operate that are going to teach us how to really use these in a meaningful way. So the counter-UAS piece is important, certainly. And then the only point, I'm probably talking too long, but the one point I'll make about the Red Sea piece that, again, came out via Andre's comments is, as we think about our role as a land-based complementary part of the naval expeditionary force in the littoral environment, we think sea denial is a role that we play has a lot of potential. And I think a very unsophisticated enemy has proven our point in the Red Sea right now, and we've got better capabilities, better partners, and we certainly think that bodes well for some of our stand-in force approaches and concepts and capabilities and investments time now. So hopefully that's helpful.
Terrific, thank you. Admiral Vernaza, the same thing about what have the current conflicts taught you and the insights that come from that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd like to just foot stomp what Andra and Brendan were talking about, our WTIs. So the integration, the teamwork, and the real-time speed of action that the WTIs have developed is truly impressive. Something that we didn't have 2 or 3 years ago, but between integrated warfare working groups and just the cohesive nature of it, they just get after it. So it's been amazing to watch that. I would say too, the EW environment. So the EW environment is dynamic, robust, and adaptive. We will have to be more dynamic, robust, and adaptive in operating that environment going forward. Certainly in a peer competitor situation, and I'll just leave it at that. The other part I'll talk to briefly too is just our information warfare teams afloat. They have done a tremendous job in terms of understanding the environment, being able to characterize the environment for both the surface folks, the air teams, our undersea teams, relay that knowledge in a way that I think really has got to be able to achieve some good effects, and then not only create those effects, but share that information to the folks that are going to go out there next, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, and really get after what worked, what didn't work, and kind of the things that we need to close on to be more effective on each cycle of deployment.
Excellent, thank you.
You bet.
Navy Special Warfare, Admiral Sands.
Thanks, sir. So I'd like to build maybe on some of the comments from the panel here. I've been in command of Naval Special Warfare just shy of 6 months, and when we first came into command, we did a commanders conference, and we invited a gentleman named Ben Milligan to come speak about our identity and our history in NSW. And he wrote a phenomenal book called The Water Beneath the Walls. And one of my questions to Ben was, Ben, when you think about NSW going back to World War II and our really inception, what has been a common trait or characteristic of NSW throughout these generations? And right away, without any hesitation, he goes agility, which is a really interesting thing. Just listening to the other TICOMs, that is a common and consistent message. I was surprised when he said agility, honestly, for NSW. I thought he was going to say toughness or being handsome, something like that, you know. But the agility, I think, is, as we look at where we're going, that's the big theme. I think there's 3 critical themes that have come out, though, at least from NSW's perspective, on the wars or the conflict in the Red Sea, and certainly the war in Ukraine. First is really the critical nature of our relationships and our interoperability with allies and partners. I was the commander of Special Operations Command Africa before this, and That was a huge lesson in Africa, where you're just a tiny, tiny presence on this gigantic continent. We cannot go it alone. We will not be successful, and we need allies and partners as part of any sort of warfighting effort, and we are focused on that. Number two is this theme that we have in NSW now. It's embrace the robots, is how we talk to ourselves about where we're going. We right now have areas where machine-on-machine fighting is taking place, and there are areas of the Earth where humans cannot survive. Like, that's right now. So what does that mean to us as we learn how to operate and survive inside, as Admiral Kaler said, inside the WES? Manned-unmanned teaming is the future. And then finally, when you think of these other conflicts, it goes back to what NSW's purpose is. We are here to enable joint force efforts. And we're doing that in the Ukraine with allies and partners as we assist allies and partners in training Ukrainian forces. And then, of course, we're doing it in the Red Sea in two primary areas: maritime interdiction operations for high-value targets. As you may be familiar with it, last January, we lost 2 SEAL operators conducting an interdiction operation that got I can't go too much into it, let's just say it gave us some equipment and intel that has enabled joint force survivability. And then finally, targeting. There are some of these skill sets, Brad talked about it, 20 years of fighting in the desert. Some of our skill sets are transferable. There's value in what we've done, and targeting is really one of them. And I think that's an area where we're really helping the Navy now and continue to focus with our efforts in the Red Sea.
Thank you. Admiral Andros.
I'll sum it up in a word of things we've learned in the Red Sea, things we've learned in Israel, in defense of Israel, and in Ukraine, is a validation of a lot of the movements that we've made with the Expeditionary Combat Force. First one, I think that if I had briefed 4 stars 3 years ago and said that we're going to send 22 people forward and they're going to reload VLS and they're going to do it with precision and speed and accuracy, and when the ships get back afloat, they're not going to have any problems with their weapon systems, they'd probably ask me to come back and show me how again and again and again. But that's what we did. And to have that time hack on it and have the pressure of it and be able to lead it with a lieutenant is pretty impressive. I will also say, back to our people, and we don't have witties necessarily across all the different tribes we have at NECC, but what we do have is people that really know their craft and being able to get out to the fleet and adapt it, where we have intelligence teams that go out there and they have signal intelligence capabilities and saying, hey, we've got this. If we put it on this platform, we can improve this platform's ability and get the commander this much information. And it's those junior officers and those chief petty officers out in the field that are looking at what they know and confident in competency in their equipment and being able to do it. And that's across the Navy, not just my force, but those junior officers and those senior enlisted that know their skill. They know their trade really well, and they come out in spades in times like this. And the last thing I think what I've learned looking at the Seabees in defense of Israel is how important it is, one, that we have the willing allies and partners, and that both our country, the United States, and the partner country or the ally really commit to it. A lot of the things that made that work, and I know that Admiral McLean knows the same thing, we've had the same job, is just a consistent effort over years to improve the posture, both of us and them, so that when chaos happens, we're ready for it. It includes training, building things, and being able to look to the future and say, what do we need? So those would be the 3 things that I would take away.
Thank you. We want to allow the time for the audience, so think about a question. This will be my last question for the panel, and I'd like to go quickly. One thing that strikes me is that we've got this very near-term deadline, at least from the CNO perspective, and even the so-called Davidson deadline out in the Western Pacific. We're talking 2 years. The CNO's NAVPLAN says be ready by January of 27. So flash information, it's January of 25. And one thing that jumped out for me the other day was that if you look at the accounts where we buy stuff, we have $500 billion of orders on the order book between now and mid-27. And we also have a tough environment for industrial capacity, production. So when you really look at it, how do we get that much better between now and January 27? I'd just like to ask for a quick shot of one or two thoughts about things that we can control between now and then that you think are important. Admiral McLean.
Yes, sir. So, I mean, the key there is thinking and operating differently, given the time horizon that we have. I think process plays a framework for that. So the cultural change that we've gone through, kind of led by our warfare tactics instructors, has introduced a humility where we are much more open and willing to rapidly learn. And because learning is a continuous process, and we're doing that at a rapid pace together with our partners, that I think that really bodes well for the next 2 years. We are learning rapidly, the process works quickly, and every Comp 2X and every SWAT that we do is different, more up-to-date, and more challenging.
Roger. Admiral Coacher.
Yeah, hey, sir, so I think it's really two things. It's the people, right? And that includes, how we fight, our operational competence, how well we can maintain and operate what we have and keep it at sea, and how we continue to evolve our tactics in the face of an evolving adversary. So we have to have our heads in the game constantly, from now until 2027. And then the other piece of this is, how we bring in new technology. So there's not a whole lot that's going to come out in the next 2 years, but there will be things that come out. So we have to make sure we understand it. We've got to get it rapidly put into our CONOPS and to our tactics, techniques, and procedures so that we're ready to go out and use it. And I certainly see unmanned and robotic as a huge part of that. There are opportunities in the next 2 years to bring those capabilities to bear to create problems for our adversaries.
Thank you. Admiral Cheever, things that can move the dial in that time frame.
Yeah, so there's a lot, actually. You can accelerate. This is the force employment piece of it, but there's also force development, force design. So we look at carrier and air wing of 2040 and what's going to be on that. But at the same time, we can accelerate everything inside. Sims at sea is something we've accelerated greatly. So we have folks that, about 24 weapons tactics instructors and young folks that go down to this fully informed, classified place on the carrier and practice everything and anything they want to do in an environment that's protected. Nobody can watch it except for us. And the weapons tactics instructors over the shoulder can get you better and better and better. We're seeing increased currency and proficiency over the deployment instead of reduced currency and proficiency. It's a game changer. Live virtual constructives, another thing you can accelerate. TTP development, tactics, techniques, and procedures, they're absolutely accelerating that. You saw M174 on the F-18 last year. That's a big thing, right?
That's big.
We're accelerating thing. The good thing about the Super Hornet is it's a giant truck. It can carry just about everything and anything you can possibly put on that thing. Think hypersonics, whatever comes out, we can put it on that platform. And then you saw the Murder Hornet configuration of added missiles and things like that to take care of threats in the Red Sea and those kind of things that come really rapidly. And my shout out to NAVAIR engineers and other folks that made that happen for us in record time. And I think we can even do faster and better than that. But those are the things you can really accelerate inside the force employment, along with motivating our people by getting everything else out of the way to let them concentrate on warfighting.
A quick side question for naval aviation. Admiral Gilday, when he was CNO, said, I want to do away with these concrete squadrons because they don't directly contribute to the high-end warfight. And now here we are with the concrete squadrons, the EWPs, and I understand we're using E2s as overland, flying over dirt in the Middle East. And how do we solve the consumption piece of this as we move forward?
It's a great question. Obviously, the world gets a vote, and the operational demand is the key to that. The underlying great news story of that is our E2Ds are an unbelievable platform. Probably can't talk about most of it in here, but what it can do is incredible. What our expeditionary helicopter folks do is incredible. P-8s, MQ-4, and expeditionary growlers. And if you talk to our joint partners and some other folks, they probably don't want that stuff to go away and that capability and capacity to go away. So it's an interesting prioritization discussion and that kind of stuff, but we are in high demand around the globe, just like the rest of our Navy and naval forces.
Thank you. General Austin.
So, Pete, thanks. A quick answer. First off, we use the term accelerate a lot, and with a constrained top line, accelerating is hard, but we have to accelerate key capabilities that posture us to, again, deter and defeat as necessary. So, that said, we are focused on key capabilities, which are both, manned and unmanned, as stated. But one point I'll make is we have to focus across the .mil-PF world of things, so we don't over-focus on fielding a piece of equipment that we can't employ. We have to, and the two pillars that are probably the most problematic are the facilities and training. Training first, so to have folks that are actually trained to use the equipment in the timeline that we're talking about, a conversation Mike and I have had over the past week a couple of times. But if I were to talk about two specific areas, I would say, again, material, non-material solutions tied to littoral maneuver and logistics in a contested environment. We need to make some investments. That matters to us. Surface lift in theater to enable the stand-in force is tremendously important. And then I'd come back to a point I've already made, which is lethality, looking across the spectrum of activities that the Marine Corps contributes to lethality. We would like to field faster. So that's
Thank you.
Short answer.
And we're now to 2 years. What can we do?
Yes, sir. So I want to build on something that Brendan mentioned in terms of the basic phase. So we got to win in the basic phase. That means when you come out of the maintenance phase, your ATOs and your SOVATs are all done. And the teams are ready to train. We're not there yet. So that kind of gets after Admiral Kaler's topic about training and what Smash had said too. We got to get our sailors to be self-sufficient. And right now, I'd say we're overly liquored up on onboard tech assists to do a lot of things. We've got to get those sailors self-sufficient, so if we go to crisis or conflict, they're able to fix their own kit underway and use the ingenuity that we know they have. Second, the last thing I'd mention would be just continued development of our WTIs over the next 2 years. The teaming, the TTPs, the ConOps development, the continuous fast learning, learn by doing, and if something doesn't work, we fail fast.
Just a quick side.
Sure.
80% combat ready. We've discussed the eye-watering capability that we're pushing out at the tip of the spear. But if you really take that 80% seriously, the different levels down from that, the guy who's still in Norfolk or San Diego, guy or gal, they have to be ready too. You just hit on it, with tech assists and special help to get ready. Are you happy, just in your IW world, that that's trickling down to all layers of the fleet response plan, all sections?
No, I'm not. NAVI4 just took over the IW basic phase for training, so we've had great partnership with Brendan in terms of how we've put that together and what that looks like. But we're going to have to spend the next 2 years to tighten that sight picture and to get where we need to be.
It's an honest answer. I appreciate it.
Okay.
For Admiral Sands.
Thanks, sir. So what can move the needle in the next 2 years? For us, increased maritime special operations proficiency and integration with the fleet. This looks like rapid integration of robots into our training and in our deployed capability. It also looks like us taking exercises that we've done under SOCOM before and moving them and now participating as NSW in fleet exercises. So we build that trust before we go to war as well. Second is LPI comms and expeditionary targeting equipment and infrastructure. So think about that, closing kill chains. We have to be able to do that in denying contested areas, and we need the tech to be able to do that from the maritime. And the last one is what we put under soft truth number 1, which is people are more important than hardware. We need to increase production of sailors. This is a CNO priority. I think the Navy is all over this. Brendan and I have been on the supply chain side of the house, and I'm really impressed with what's happening. But for NSW, we're SEAL, we're SWCC, we're combat support, and we're combat service support, and we really need it all. And we have a saying in our force that your value to the organization and the mission is not based on your proximity to the X. And all of that is, everything that we have obviously comes from the Navy and from that supply chain. So I think that's really essential to move the needle in the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Admiral Andros, final on the
thanks,
two-year
sir.
deal.
I will just say, to your point about the people and producing the people, the Warrior Challenge and getting the right recruiting there and getting those, because it's going to take between now and then to develop those new people we're getting off the street into SEAL, ZOD, and Diver. So getting that right is important right now. I think one thing to move the needle and what we've got on being purchased over the next 2 years, one thing is we just got to commit to what we're not going to do anymore. Yeah. If you're starting, a team that we're starting to train right now in maintenance phase is still going to be in the OFRP on January 1st, 2027. So getting that right and committing to what we're not going to do. And then the other thing that we're looking at when we're looking at wholeness in our equipment pillar is where do we have redundancies? Where do we have something that's one-off? What money can we spend it on? How can we throw the dollars that we do have after things to get wholeness? As we look at EMOC coming online and looking at supporting
EMOC stands for
Expeditionary Maritime Operations Centers. Do I have as an Expeditionary Combat Command a different C5ISR system that's going to be developed by him? That's wasted dollars because the fleet commander at the end needs all our systems to work together and everything to synergize together. So thanks, sir.
Thank you. So I don't see anybody at the microphones yet, but this is your chance. And we have a taker. We only ask that you identify yourself and you do ask a question so we can get at a few folks. Sir. We can't hear the mic for the folks who are audio-visual.
You guys have me over here?
Yeah, we have you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Kai Alberg, U.S. Naval Institute. Since the First World War, wars have lasted longer and munitions have been consumed much faster than expected. So reloading fast and shooting fast is great, but what do you need to carry out your mission in terms of production capacity and stockpiles of things such like Tomahawks, long-range anti-ship missiles, standard missiles? I've seen reports that we'd be out within a week or a month of a major conflict. Where do we stand, and where can we get by 2027 where we need to be?
Thank you. So with our large panel, I'll just throw this to one or two of the panel members, and I'll start with the air boss here on, the ever-present Winchester question.
Yeah, so a lot of it depends on how you fight, right? And then gets to what you can fight with. We're always concerned about the stocks and that kind of stuff, but it really goes to the fleet commanders, the combatant commanders, and to Joint Staff and the OSD for the answer to that question, which is what are the minimums to fight the war based on the way they want to fight the war and that kind of stuff. Our concern is that our young folks are trained 100% to use their weapons effectively, so we're not wasting any weapons, and they're effective every time they shoot them. Because what we value in naval aviation is valid shots and valid kills. And we practice it all the time so that we don't waste anything. And so that's where we are. We always like more ordnance, and we like to use it in training as well as in combat so that we can prove that it's exactly what we think it is and the weapons are going to work. So that's where we are. I'm confident that if we go fight, we will win. Yeah, that's probably enough.
Any other panel members want to throw in on that one?
Thanks.
I just say that there's an obvious answer tied to not just what Andra said, which is great comments, but it's the urgency with which we work with our defense industrial base in order to be able to recover. That's another lesson learned. We could have gone a long time with it 2 questions ago about the Ukraine and Israel and Red Sea, but one of the clear lessons there is that we need the support of our defense industrial base to maintain the stocks that we need for crisis and contingency, and our weapons are getting more complex, more expensive, and harder to build.
In a kind of ironic way, maybe the fact that this all happened and the impetus it's been to improve production has helped.
I hope
so. It's not all a negative story we talk about the drawdown, but we've also have a response.
Yeah, Pete, spotlight's on.
Yes.
There are initiatives to get after it, but I think we have to continue to invest in those and to flash the bang to recognize that added capacity that's necessary. It's not going to be gratifying, but it may be on the 2-year timeline, but we have to, as a nation, persevere on that effort for certain.
And all we're asking from industry is to be on cost, schedule, and performance and accelerate.
Easy.
I think
Please. We said
innovation,
please.
you could throw innovation in there.
And thank you for doing it.
Next question, sir.
Good morning, Admirals General. Patrick Nansen, CEO of Maritime Operations Group. Admiral Sands, I was a platoon commander with Leif Malo when he had his surprise deployment to Afghanistan with SEAL Team 4. In the previous session, Admiral Kaler was asked an insightful question about preparing the carrier strike group for submarine threats. And for decades, the surface and air components have been leveraging commercially owned and operated fighter aircraft to help improve readiness. I'm curious about your thoughts as to translating that model into the undersea domain with commercially owned and operated conventional submarines. And I think there are implications here for both surface, air, and subsurface components improving ASW readiness.
Admiral Goucher.
Yeah, so certainly I'll kind of go with the Admiral Kaler answer of, I'd love to take more, but I think the question just becomes, A, what is the cost? B, when can it be there? And then C, what can it actually do that's going to move the needle for me to make my forces more lethal, or to make our surface or air forces better at finding submarines? So the devil's really in the details on that. There's been a number of folks that have brought that up. I think from the submarine force perspective, if I told you anything I'd like to do is I'd just like to be able to take crews and shipyards and be able to send them out to get training, but as long as the systems match what they would operate on our submarines. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, but we do have top lines, and so it's always just going to be, what am I going to give up to do that? And so it's the whole business case to kind of see that through and determine if it's worth pursuing.
I think that's what we have time for. Did that answer your question, sir?
The answer is about 2/3 of what an SSN costs per day, sir. So happy to field more of those questions later down the line.
I will say, as a former Carrier Strike Group 4 commander, our allies and partners have helped us in that world greatly. Yeah. And every time they do, it is appreciated, and they are pros. And they deliver. When we train Carrier Strike Groups and the rest of the force, they are pros, and they deliver for us in that, exactly what you're talking about. Thanks.
Thanks. Next question over here. Sir.
My name is James Harkins, retired Marine.
Right.
And I'm going to take the Marine out of the question. I have two sidebars. Number one, about the two SEALs. I'd like a sidebar later off on that one. And then I'd like somebody to talk to me about the two aircraft that we shot down. That's not my question, though. That's a sidebar. My question goes like this. We deployed 1st Battalion, 5th Marines in increments because the Navy was not able to support going out to the Western Pacific with the vessels available. I'd like to know which of you can tell me when the Navy is going to have sufficient forces, floating vessels, that can move the Marine Corps to the Western Pacific all at one time.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Admiral McLean because I think that's tied up in the operational availability of our amphibious force.
Yep, thank you. So to answer your question, sir, I would say it goes to the point I made at the very beginning. We have to finish our maintenance availabilities on time. What I think you're referring to is the Boxer ARG. And looking at that last year, it was certainly unfortunate that we had the rudder casualty right there at the end of the training phase. But what it showed me was that between Harpers Ferry, Somerset, and Boxer, they were able to improvise and overcome and get the entire ARG out there, and then on the back end, extend Boxer and keep her out there longer. And I thought that really showed the flexibility and the adaptability is something that Admiral Sands talked about, how important that is. It showed how the Navy Marine Corps team was able to improvise and overcome for that. They accomplished amazing things, including one of the things that really impressed me was the typhoon relief effort in the Philippines for the island of Bosca.
And it's really, there's the, solve the current problem. And then I think there's a strong recognition that, this is an area that needs attention. I know the Commandant and the CNO have had discussions about this, and commitments have been made. I don't know if General Austin has anything to say about that.
I appreciate the question, and it's a hard question. It's a gritty conversation that the Marine Corps and the Navy are having right now to get after this. And it's not just a them thing; it's an us thing. How do we fix amphib readiness so that we can create that 3.0 presence that I talked about? We had 3 months ago when we were had three Marine expedition ARGMUs deployed at the same time, but to make the schedule with avails and have the Marines aligned to meet those is tremendously important, and nothing about this is easy, but we're all in, Brendan, you know that, and eager to help solve this, but it's important to us and to our nation. So it's a great question, sir. Thank you.
It's important.
I do have a backhanded compliment, though. 1-5 did appreciate the extended tour in the Far East. They got to go to a lot of different places. They got to train with a lot of different countries, and they had a wonderful time. So it was a positive, along with being a negative. Congratulations.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. Sir.
Hi, sir. It's Justin Katz with Breaking Defense. Just a quick question for Air Boss. Sir, you said in your opening remarks MQ-25 will be flying in 25 and then flying off a carrier in 26. Unmanned has its challenges. Operating anything safely on a carrier has its challenges. What are your expectations in terms of growing pains or long pole in the tent when it comes to bringing those two together into your air wing? Thank you.
Thanks much, and thanks for being here. I don't see a lot of issue bringing it together. The first thing is you got to get the thing flying, and the second thing, you got to get it on the carrier with the unmanned control station that we already have on the carrier waiting for that platform. So really excited to get that going. I think the integration, I'm just going to turn the weapons tactics instructors loose, and they will exactly figure out how to operate this thing seamlessly in a manned-unmanned teaming thing, and then that will open up the future for us. So pretty excited for that because we need that capability, and we need it this year to start flying, and I think that'll build the confidence necessary for everybody to go, that thing's really cool and real, and off we go in the manned-unmanned teaming. We're already doing it in P8 world with MQ4, so I think that's the future. That's why we know a lot about how this works, and we've shared the lessons with surface, sub, and everyone else, and Air Force in how these things work, so we're pretty excited about it.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Mike Mann.
Good morning, thanks. Mike Mann, retired service warfare officer. General, the question is for you. Your point about the Houthis and their sea denial capabilities is well taken, but we've also been able to strike them with impunity whenever we've chosen to do that. In the South China Sea, around the periphery of China, you're going to be faced with overwhelming force that the Chinese are going to be able to deliver. How comfortable are you that you have the force protection capabilities for your advanced bases to be able to actually function as you envision them?
So thanks for the question, and we're eager to talk about this. And the more we talk about the role that we envision ourselves playing as a stand-in force, which we're campaigning in that capacity time now with both 3rd and 12th Marine Littoral Regiment and 4th Marines and other elements of 3 MEF and 1 MEF in the Philippines. So we've really doubled down on 2 MEFs focused in that area. I will tell you that the adversary is not 10 feet tall and small, mobile, maneuverable, is survivable. There's other things that we have to take a look at, like is decoys, deception, and capabilities that I'm not going to talk about here for obvious reasons, but that many in this audience contribute to that survive our enhance our survivability. But I do think that it is a survivable force. I do think that our relationship with allies and partners actually emboldens that and is a tremendously important capability and capacity. But I guess I'll just leave it, Mike, just by saying that we're very focused on that and spent much of my 2 years as a wing commander figuring out how do we survive, how do we disperse, how do we displace, how do we C2, and how do we operate in that environment. And we're getting into some useful conclusions. So unsatisfying answer, I apologize, but I'm going to leave it there if that's okay. Happy to follow up. Eager to follow up.
Sure, I feel the presence of Bill Hamblett over my shoulder, but I would like to thank our panel for giving us all this time. Again, have deep appreciation for the challenge you face, and very much appreciate the fact you gave us the time today. And I'd like to have a big round of applause for our panel.
Thanks also for great questions from the audience. As usual, we have a small token of appreciation for each of our panelists today. Naval Institute Press book, China's New Navy, The Evolution of the PLAN from the People's Revolution to a 21st Century Cold War by Xiaobing Li. One more round of applause for our panelists, and please, before you leave the auditorium here today, please provide your feedback on this conversation in the West app. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this morning's panel. We're now moving into our lunch break. Lunch is being served today upstairs in 2 locations. The lunch line is open and running through 1 p.m. in ballroom 6CDEF, and at noon, a second service location will open the upstairs exhibit area in the sales pavilion. You must have a ticket to participate. There may be still some left at conference registration desks out in the lobby. This is a networking lunch with no speaker. Take advantage of the opportunity to meet and network with fellow attendees. This panel concludes today's program on the primary stage. You'll find plenty of content on the stages throughout both exhibit areas. Consult the app for all the details, and have a great afternoon. Thank you.